Okay.
Hi.
There we go.
Okay, releasing in Australian cinemas this month is a documentary called Quant, all about fashion designer Mary Quant. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the director of Quant, Sadie Frost. Sadie, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Hiya, hi.
Now, I know you have quite an extensive career as an actress. How did it come about that you were able to make this documentary?
So I've been acting a long time on and off, and I've also been producing films. So I produced films a good 20 years ago, and then the last 10, 15 years, I've had my own production company, and I've produced, the last film I produced was with Samantha Morton and Billy Piper called Two for Joy. And I'd been also directing short films. I was working with a company that had been given the rights to do the Mary Quant documentary. And one of the producers came to me and said, Sadie, I think you'd be great for this because you're a woman, you've been in fashion, you've been in film, you've been in the public eye, so you kind of understand the sensitivity of what Mary Quant would have gone through. And at first it was very overwhelming, but I read her autobiography and did a documentary filmmaking course because I have gone back and studied film over the last 10 years, whether it's been a master's or I just always think it's very good to do the research and kind of get the qualification. So I did that and I felt prepped, and I wrote a paper edit, and I felt like I could tell her story, and I kind of enjoyed, once I committed, I enjoyed every moment, and I've really thoroughly loved directing now.
Well done on that. It's a really comprehensive documentary about Mary Quant, although I must say, I think she only died, was it a month ago or so?
Just a month ago. It's really lived to a ripe old age, lovely woman, lovely life. But yeah, she passed a month ago, and you know, when we started this doc, she was old, in her 90s, and I know she was frail when we were making the doc because we didn't make some plans to kind of meet up, but that never happened. And yeah, so it's interesting that we finished the doc and she was still alive, and we have this doc now, and people who are interested in Mary, and there's a lot of people that are, and I think it's very important to know our history and, you know, like what she did for women, what was going on socially and culturally and politically in the UK and the world in the 60s that really has had effect on every decade. I think it's very nice to have everything, all the information in one project.
Absolutely. And in fact, the swinging 60s, if you like to put it that way, was sort of a pivotal era for her, where women were becoming more independent, where fashion design, etc., was an important part of that. And reputedly, she also developed the miniskirt.
She did. And there's a whole part in the doc of, like, you know, few people take ownership for that. Like, when there is a movement, it's not normally one person having that idea. There's always a few people having the similar idea at the same time. So she I think, you know, she put it on the map. She encouraged women to express themselves and liberated women, and said you could dress for fun and make things free and easy. And, you know, she had such a kind of vivacious personality that she encouraged other women to, you know, to just kind of be individual and express themselves. So she did a lot. Yeah, she did a lot. I think clothes were very restrictive and boring, and people dressed like that, you know, women dressed like their mothers, and there was no real identity for teenagers and young people. So what she did, by kind of all of her designs was something amazing for women.
Absolutely, yes, quite revolutionary. It's fascinating the way that you've put together the interviews with Kate Moss and Vivienne Westwood, Andrew Rhodes, so many other terrific people, as well as some incredible archival footage. Tell me about sourcing all of that.
So when I approached the documentary, it was very important to have a real kind of mixture of fact, but then things that were beautiful, and then things that kind of told the story, and getting that balance, you know, with audio over archive. and I did the reconstructions and the Super 8, and it just kind of, I just came up, I think, quite quickly with how I wanted it to be. So wrote my kind of wish list and my paper edit, and then we went out and sourced all the archive that fitted into that. And I love using the archive to set the scene of what something was like in 66, or what Britain was like in the 1950s, and really to have that archive going all the way through from the late 1950s to the to today, really, and what was going on with Mary Quant, makeup and stuff in Japan. You can kind of just see how much the world has changed. I would have felt very restricted if I just had to do talking heads where people are just talking about what was going on and describing what was going on. So I think it's a nice kind of I think it keeps things exciting to watch if you're showing all the different kind of elements mixed up together. But it's getting a real balance of like not being too top heavy with archive, or too the reconstruction not working. You have to kind of, you don't really know how it's going to work until it's all put together, because how do you make those transitions as well? But no, I was really pleased with it, and now being I'm nearly finishing on this Twiggy doc. I've got a couple more days filming, so filming next. I'm wrapping the film. We announced it in Cannes last year, and we're actually going to shoot the last proper scene in Cannes on a virtual production stage with Twiggy next week. So I think that's exciting. And then I'll kind of be editing, and I won't really know how this doc's turning out and for a few months. And it's a really nerve-wracking time, because you don't know if all your ideas and everything that's been in your head has actually worked.
I was going to ask you about making a film about Leslie Hornby, or Twiggy.
Yeah.
So well done on that. I'm looking forward to seeing that. But back to Mary Quant. Yeah. So tell me about getting those interviews and getting family and others involved. That really was quite an important part of the process.
Definitely, it's finding the balance of people that were her peers, people that were around at the time, her family, people who really knew her, but then also people who could, maybe be relevant to younger audiences, and people today about what she did for fashion and how she inspired people. So, for instance, Edward Enninful, we had Edward Enninful, and obviously getting Kate, because Kate, I think people were interested in hearing what she has to say about it. And then also it was, so getting all those interviews together, which was great. And, Pete Townsend, or there were so many wonderful people, but also getting the music, but not trying to kind of have everything like how you think it should be. So yes, I got some 60s and 70s music, but then also getting a Clash song, and a Florence and the Machine song, and a Spandau Ballet song. So you get like a real trip down memory lane.
You certainly do. There's so much going on in your documentary. It's quite incredible. I was interested in her career development, because she then diversified into so many other things, cosmetics and so on, and her brand was put on so much. It's interesting the way you explore that, and whether that perhaps maybe had an influence on her name.
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
Oh, just about the diversification of her brand, and that she went to use her labeled cosmetics and other things, and that whether that had an impact on her brand, because I think there was some criticism that she was perhaps going into too many areas and going away too much from fashion.
Exactly. I think what happens with people is, the business, I think the fashion maybe wasn't doing so well after its initial kind of success. And then to sustain a business, you're looking at different areas that could be potentially commercial and financially viable. So there's, she did dilute her brand by doing lots of things. And I think it's kind of, she was one of the first people to do it. So it was a real kind of, it was a trial and error thing. And maybe doing too much too quick, but she was a workaholic and she was very driven. And also you don't really know, like behind the scenes on like the business deals, how much like investors are putting pressure on people just to do things. And just keeping a business afloat, a fashion business, but so many fashion businesses go into debt. They can make huge profits and then suddenly come crashing down. So it's kind of working out that balance. But I think she probably, looking back now, she just went so far. But you know, she was one of the first. There was no handbook. She was one of the first people to do it, and you know, she might have done it differently if she knew at the end what she was getting herself into.
Sure. No, I understand. I'm interested in the way that you've used a few dramatized scenes in the documentary. Tell me about those decisions.
Well, I think because Mary, I couldn't interview Mary now, you know, then I wanted to kind of bring some real heartfelt emotion into it. And I felt that maybe by I read her book and used some excerpts from the book that I kind of rewrote, and having them to kind of bookend the different acts in the documentary, so I could show the different stages of her life, you know, the kind of fun bit at the beginning, kind of her slight eccentricity, her just a bit more of an insight into her personality through words that she'd kind of thought and written. So I think by doing, and there's always a risk in doing reconstruction, you never know if it's going to work. But I felt Camilla Rutherford who's a brilliant actress, really just had some amazing essence, and we had such fun doing that, from designing the set to the colors to the fashion to the music to the props. You know, I think being someone who's been on film sets all her life, me, you know, doing acting when I was younger, and to whatever film sets I've been on, you know, it's about creating story and texture. So like doing the reconstruction was really fun for me, and also showed me that I could, you know, I want to go into directing a feature, you know, after Twiggy, maybe that's what I'll do. So just even doing the mini dramatizations were great, because I could see that I could write a scene that's completely fictional and direct that was great fun.
Oh, excellent stuff. And yes, looking forward to seeing your feature film as well when you eventually get around to it. Very good indeed. Now, the editing process, I mean, you obviously had so much material, so many interviews, so much archival footage. The actual editing process is really where the film is made. Tell me about your process there, because it's so hard to decide what is deleted and what stays in the final version of the film.
I mean, I think from, you know, the way I worked and the kind of paper edit that I wrote, and the story, writing the story of what I want the documentary to be, which to some people might look like a kind of, there's no rhyme or reason to it, but for me, it really makes sense. And then trying to fit everything into, you know, keeping my story into that. So when I'm interviewing people, I know, for instance, Charlotte Tilbury, when I interviewed her, she would be in the third act and she'd be talking about being a businesswoman and building a makeup empire. Or when I was talking to Kate, it was obvious that she could talk about supermodels, and then that would be the Jean Shrimpton bit. So knowing what each person would do and knowing what bit of archive, you know, setting things up and stories and themes, then so you kind of create these themes and stories, and then yes, the doc could be too long and working out the best bits of the interview, but it's really matching up the interviews to the themes and the stories that I've kind of created in the doc. So there is a discipline to it. So you might have something that is so brilliantly said by somebody, but it's not going to fit into the doc unless it fits into that theme. But then there's also you need to kind of have a openness and a kind of organicness to kind of change things if something should be changed. So it's really having trust in your kind of intuition. I loved editing because you feel really safe. You're like in a little cocoon. It can take, 3-4 months. You can be in a dark room on your own. And you know, I work with an editor, you know, me and an editor going back and forth, but I was kind of there a lot, creating my story. And, you know, I'm very kind of OCD and precise, like, you know, something is a tiny bit off for me, and it is 100% my vision. I would it would have to be changed. So, you know, you get this time of like sitting in a room for 3-4 months and drinking lots of tea and eating chocolate biscuits. It's you know, you're just like, and you just shut the whole world off. You know, I kind of like that kind of thing about filmmaking, where you can, being behind the camera, being inside the studio, being inside the edit, you know, I'm kind of stepped out of a whole different side of myself, and I really love it. So it's a great thing to be doing right now.
Oh, well, congratulations on all that and that process. And apart from the film now releasing in Australia this month, I gather the film has had worldwide releases?
Yeah, it's been it's got distribution in America. It was released in Japan, Australia, Europe, UK. You know, it was I think a difficult time, obviously, making a film during COVID and releasing it just after COVID. And, you know, it came out in England last year. In England, it's on Sky, which is a big platform here. I don't know if it's in Australia, but the thing is, it is, or yeah, I don't know, like I never understand all the different things, but all I know is like when because there's so many different things a film can be distributed through. So when Mary passed, it felt like the film should be showed everywhere because it's celebrating her life, and but Sky own it in the UK, so the BBC couldn't show it because they own it for 3 years. You know, it would have been great to have shown on the BBC because she's a very BBC kind of person, I would have thought. But yeah, it's on Sky in the UK and under the heading of iconic women. So it's just great to make a film, finish a film, and get a film out there. A lot of the time, films don't even get finished.
Very true, very true. So congratulations on, again, having the film out there, and now in Australia we can see it, although I saw it a while ago, but very good. Just to conclude, Sadie, great talking to you. I'll ask you a question slightly out of left field. Can you name any films that featured Mary Quant's costumes that impressed you?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. Like I know that they, you know what, the hard thing is going straight from Quant to Twiggy is that my brain is like crossing over all over the place. But I don't know if maybe the costumes in Blow Up, Mary, I bet there were some Mary Quant costumes, clothes in that. But what would you say?
Actually, I was thinking of Antonioni's film as well. I think that's a very good example, Blow Up.
Yeah.
And there were a number of other 60s films that featured Mary Quant's costumes and fashion and so on. So anyway, that's a great example. Look, Sadie, it's been great talking to you. We've been speaking to Sadie Frost, the director of Quant, the documentary about Mary Quant, now releasing in Australian cinemas. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you. Have a lovely day.